All right.
Can you tell me your name, your date of birth, and where you were born?
Joseph B. Davis, Silver Creek, Mississippi. Born 1929, 5th of May, 1929.
What did your parents do for a living?
Well, we was part-time farmers and loggers, sawmill work and such as that. My dad was mostly into logging, and then later on, after about 20 years, he went on the river and was a riverboat. He wasn't a captain, he was a barge foreman out there, over the crew on the Mississippi River, running up and down the river, pushing these barges with fuel.
And what were y'all church-going folks? And
Yeah,
what
we
church did y'all
went
go
to Calvary at Silver Creek. Of course, hadn't been going in a long time. I'd been beat up and stove up, As you get on over there in age, you get slowed down, This coming May, I'll be 90.
Can you tell me about the house you grew up in?
Well, the house I grew up in was more like a cotton house, I guess. Back then, there wasn't any real good houses as a whole. The people that had them, they was fortunate that they had good jobs and things and could afford it, but the rest of us lived in rough lumber houses and things like that, 3 and 4 rooms. And that's what I grew up in until I got on up, I guess, 14, and I run away from school, and LP Nation and myself, and we joined the Air Force. And LP wasn't but 15, but his sister signed for him, and we went to Keesler and signed in and stayed in service 21. I stayed 21. He stayed about 22, I think.
So when you were young, was there ever a time when money was tight or when you had to go without things?
It was tight. My dad was working for $10 a week back in 1929 and 30. He was working for Mr. Bill Peeler, driving a log truck. And the old trucks then they a lot different than what they are now, And they haul 3 and 4 logs on there instead of a big load like they haul on these long poles and stuff. We short logs, 14, 16 feet long, 12, and they haul these logs into sawmills and such.
What were some of the things your family did together when you were young?
Well, Daddy used to go with us 3 boys. I had 2 brothers there that we would go to the creek, and he'd go down and play with us in the creek, and that was a main joy on Sundays. We'd come out of the field, and at night we went down there and took our bath at the creek, all of us, and all the neighbors around us would gang up and go to the creek and have a big time running, and then we'd be running each other, have a certain games we'd play called Gator, going out through the woods, hunting each other, running down to us and the Stevens boys, Pete and BH and Curtis and all of us. We'd run out through the woods, chasing each other, playing just crazy kids, and we would all get bathed up good and go back to the house and sleep good that night. Then we'd have that bath in that cold water.
What foods do you remember in particular from your childhood?
Well, we eat just about anything that you put on the table, all of us. And my dad made the remarks, that it didn't matter what my mother cooked, that we never grumbled about anything. As 3 boys, we just didn't, act smarty about anything. We eat everything, but we was a garden. We grew turnips, collards, beets, peas, beans, every kind of bean you can think of, just about it. We grew it, and we didn't buy too much. Mostly sacks of flour. We'd get 24-pound and 48-pound bags of flour. It was flours made up in Minnesota and Michigan and places like that. At those wheat mills up there, and they'd bring it down here. But we would take our corn, in sacks, pecks of corn, a bushel of corn, and go down to the mill. My grandpa had an old grist mill with one of these old popping engines that pulled it, And he run that mill for a long time, and he sold it down there to Bill Dale in Silver Creek. And Bill hired my grandpa to come down there and run it for him. And we would take our corn down there and grind and get all our meal for the week in there. And it was my job to haul the corn on the mule's back, you know, and throw it across the mule's back on the sacks and carry it to the mill, you know.
What did y'all do on Christmas?
Well, we would have a good Christmas. They would, they didn't get us too much because they wasn't able to, you know. We would get a few toys, and I remember the oranges and the Brazil nuts and walnuts and things like that. But we loved the nuts and the oranges and apples and stuff like that. But most of the time they would buy us some clothes, and Santa Claus would be brought the clothes to us, you know, and for us to go to school in. And overalls was wear back then, you know.
What would you like to say about the community you grew up in?
Well, as a whole, it was a pretty good place to live. I mean, nobody, they'd fuss and argue, and sometimes the sisters, all of them, the Harrington sisters up there, was bad to fight each other. But my Aunt Missy and Aunt Jimmy D, they was the ones that never did say anything. Aunt Tiny, she moved to Jackson, so she got away from them. But all the rest of them, my Aunt Betty and my mother, and all of them, they would scrap and pull hair and things that beat all I ever seen in my life. They was always fussing about everything they could think of, you know. It just couldn't seem to get along, you know. But my two brothers and myself was kind of like that when we grew up. I remember the two of them would jump on me, and we'd fuss and fight, and they'd run me around a lot with a piece off a picket fence, and we'd be running from each other, and this, like kids are gonna do, you know, they fuss and argue. And then we grew up, and we had two sisters late in life, and of course they're both dead now. Patsy Turnage from Oakville was my sister, and Margaret, she was married about 4 times around, you know. She never could get along with her. She was always hot-headed, and she couldn't get along with her husbands, and she died a single woman. And she had, the Harringtons was always a bunch of Spitfire people, you know. At least my bunch was, you know. There was some at New Hebron that was pretty good people there, but they kept sort of quiet, and they never did fuss and argue like we did down to my mother and her sisters, you know.
What was going to town like for you?
We didn't go to town too much. If we went to town, it was on Saturday, and we'd go in a mule wagon, and we had hitching places down there where they had built up alongside of Silver Creek. Silver Creek was a pretty good sized town then. They had I guess 6 or 7 stores in town. Kaufman's, Gibron's. Gibron's was a general store that sold turning plows, harrows, all these things you worked in the field with, clothes, groceries. They sold everything you needed. And Willie George there, he sold all kinds of stuff. Bill Dale. We just had a bunch of general stores, and they would sell just about anything. Cow feed, if there's stuff, they'd have big sacks of feed thing, because they used a lot with oxen, pulling, you know, the oxen was using in the woods pulling logs. My daddy and them used oxen with the peelers. In Silver Creek, the peelers was in the logging business, and Billy Peeler's grandparents was always logging people, you know, and the Rogers is at old Silver Creek. But we used horses and oxen to do with.
Can you tell me about what school was like for you?
I didn't like school. In fact, I run away from school when I was in the 9th grade and joined the Air Force. And after I got in there, I seen that I needed to get some education, and I went to night school and studied and got a GED. And but LP, one run away with me, he was 15, and I wasn't quite 18. But LT's folks was all dead, and his sister signed for him to get in there. She said that he didn't need to be running in the streets down there fussing and fighting and arguing with the other kids, and she just let him go, and we both stayed in, made a career of it.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your career in the Air Force and after that?
Well, when I was in the Air Force, I served in Korea and went into Japan. I went to Alaska, to Point Barrow, Alaska, and then I went to a little radar site outside of Point Barrow, about 32 miles out there, where Wiley Post and Will Rogers was killed out there, where they hit that bank alongside the ocean up there. And then I was at Tula, Greenland, and I stayed up there a tour, and as Tampa, Florida. Well, in fact, I was just all over the United States. And I was an airplane mechanic and worked on airplanes, and I was down at Tampa for quite a bit, 2 times. Eglin, in fact, I was discharged at Eglin when I got out of service. And I really enjoyed the Air Force. If I could get back in there right now, I'd be ready to go, because I wished I'd have stayed longer. You know, the longer you stay, the more your money gets to be. And I stayed in right close to 21 years, and I get a good salary now, so I don't really need it. You know, I got out and went straight to work. Didn't miss a day. In fact, I was up here working before my discharge become effective, releasing me with my time to retire. And I bought that little station up there on Silver Creek up on the hill there, and I stayed there about a month and a half, and I couldn't stand it. I had to go. And so I sold it to another man and went to Dallas and got on a truck and started traveling all over the United States trucking, and finally wound up with a company of my own over there called Dave Co. And I had about 15 Peterbilts I run all over the country, you know. And so I've done pretty good in life as a whole, you know. I've really enjoyed it. I had a good life, and had a lot of good friends, you know. I loved everybody. I just didn't care about fussing and fighting like most people do, you know.
So.
Yeah, sure was. My wife's been dead now. The 4th day of January, this coming January, will be 12 years. She died with kidney failure, and she was sick for 12 years, and then she died and passed on. And I've never been married again. I just had fun everywhere I went, you know, and let everybody take care of themselves, because I had enough problems with her sickness and stuff, and things were bad. It took everything we made to pay the bills, you know, doctor bills and stuff. And but I was lucky. I had the money to do it with, you know.
How did you meet your wife?
I delivered a death message. Cody people that lived out what they call a hooker community. She lived out there around Hooker, and she was a little store up there at the crossroads at Hooker now, where Hooker's at, and Lola May's store is up in there. She lived right above Lola May's store there, in a house there. And I met her, and I started talking to her and running on, you know, and I asked about coming to see her, and she said, yeah. And after that, she was the only one, you know. I thought she was a pretty rascal, you know.
What was it like raising kids in Lawrence County?
I never had any trouble. When we went to Dallas, we started having problems with that. And so right back in 1978, I moved back to Silver Creek, where I could get them out from over there. And they're doing real good. One of them lives here in Monticello. His name Wade Davis, and he worked over here at the store here till he got hurt, and he's on disability now. And then Wesley he drives a truck. It all seemed like all the Davises around here was truck drivers, you know, at the time. Archie Davis's boys was truck drivers here from Monticello, and they was in service too. Emmett and all of them was in service, and he had a pretty good bunch of them, you know. And all of us, we was just all hard-working people, and always cared for each other, you know.
What were some of the most memorable and most important places in Lawrence County, in your opinion?
I think Monticello was one of the places I liked back then. We'd come out because they had a movie house here, and we did it at Silver Creek. And we would come here. We had a little old tent movie we'd have come into town, play one night a week. And we'd go down to it, you know, one night a week and see it. But we would come over here and go to the Ritz down here that had it. And Mr. Clinton was he was everybody's friend, you know. It seemed to be, at least he was mine. And we would come over there and all stand around and meet the girls and talk to the girls down there, you know, and go in the theater with them and buy popcorn and sit and talk and eat popcorn, you know. But Monticello was our place we'd hang out. I didn't like Prentice too much, you know.
How would you say Lawrence County has changed?
Oh my God, the highways used to, Lawrence County right here, the East 3 riverboats come up, bring fertilizer from down New Orleans, those places, come up here to over here by the banks, where the insurance place is at and all. There was a place there where they docked. And they would come here with ox wagons and mule wagons and stuff and load the wagons down with fertilizer. Sometimes it'd take 5 days to get back wherever they was going, you know, to get the fertilizer off that river. And it was just, now everything's fast and moving. You got an interstate running right through, with the Highway 84 run through there. I can remember when it was a gravel road all the way through here. And everything, we went out up through here where the Reddies had the service station. And Monticello wasn't all that big then, but it's not that much bigger now, but it's always been a pretty good place as a whole. And I had a son-in-law that was a sheriff here. Doc Bradford was my son-in-law. A lot of folks didn't like him, but a lot of folks did, you know. And you can't please everybody.
What do you miss about the past?
I don't really miss anything. I just, it seems like that everything is passed by fast, and I'm almost 90 years old. I'll be 90 years old the 5th of May, and it just seems like now that a week is a day. You know, it goes by. The older you get, the faster it gets. And but it seems like you'll never get to be 20. You know. But it's been a good life. It's a good life, and when the Lord's ready for me, I'm ready to go. I've been saved. I've had Jesus in my heart for many years, and my mother taught me at a real early age. We would get up and sing gospel songs on the bed when we was little young'uns. I mean, 4 and 5 years old. We was up there trying to sing, and she would teach us Bible stories and things like that, and. It's been a good life. I've really enjoyed it, Jim.
Do you remember the first time you ever saw a television set or a computer?
I sure do. We was at school at Silver Creek, and Mr. Victor Hartzog had a 4-inch television that they had in the house. Everybody had those little bitty televisions then. And we went down there just to see it. We couldn't hardly believe it, but see, it had been predicted years before that we would see each other in this side of the way. Now with telephones, you see each other. 1 minute you could see somebody on the other side of the world. Things it's changed so much, you can't believe it, the way things has changed.
What is your best piece of advice?
The best piece of advice to me is study the Bible. Read the Bible, study the Bible. And understand what Jesus done for us. That he come and died, gave his life to save us from our sins. And the people that don't think there's a hell or a heaven, they got a rude awakening coming. And the things that is predicted in that Bible is happening right now. And I'm not a prophet, but I believe Jesus is on the way here, going to be here soon. And there's a war shaping up right now, and we got the best president we've ever had in there right now. That's the best one. God put him in there. I didn't think I thought he was the sorriest man ever lived years ago, and he's done more now since he's made the president. I voted for him, and he's done more for the people and got more jobs right now. They're talking about it today on the television and telling about all the things that he's done since he's been in there, and the Democrats has fought him teeth and toenail. I don't call myself a Democrat or a Republican. I just vote for who I think's the best.
So what would you like to tell Lawrence Countyans who are going to watch this in 20 or 50 years from now?
I don't think we'll be around here 20 to 50 years from now. I think it's a short time. And if you're not ready to meet the Lord, get ready, because he's coming, and it's not going to be long.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Joe.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's been really great.